Chuck Shoot Podcast. Thanks for tuning in. I want to remind you to go ahead and hit that subscribe button if you haven't done so already, so that way you'll never miss an episode. I got some really cool guests lined up, and we have a great one today, of course. Danny Zelisko, legendary concert promoter. This guy's been in the business for a very long time, but before he did concerts, he actually started with athletes. When he was a kid, he was asking for autographs and developing relationships with these star ball players. So we'll talk a little bit about that and then how he kind of develops these relationships, and then he gets started in the music business and moving to Arizona. You'll hear all about the ins and outs of the concert promotion business, which is interesting to me. I hope that you guys enjoy it too. Danny has a wealth of knowledge, and it's just really fascinating stuff. Make sure you check out his new book. It's titled All Excess, not Access, Excess, to hear more about his run-ins with Alice Cooper, Led Zeppelin, Paul McCartney, Aerosmith, so many others. We're just going to scratch the surface of it here, but there's a lot of stuff in this episode. Hope you enjoy it. Welcome, Danny Zelisko, to the Chuck Shoot Podcast. How you doing?
I'm great. How are you guys?
Great. So yeah, just if we can, I just want to go through your whole life story in about an hour, if we can do that, as much as we can get through. Obviously, can't get through all of it. That's why people got to get the book. And the book is called Danny Zelisko, not all access, it's all excess, correct?
Correct.
Yeah, that's exciting. So your story starts in Chicago. That's where you grew up, and actually doesn't start with music. It starts with sports. You were really interested in sports stars, and you reached out to them, got autographs and things. My question is, when you reach out to these sports stars, were you ever rejected? Like, were they ever rude to you? And if so, how did that not discourage you from continuing to do that? Because I would think at my age of 10 years old, if I'm reaching out to one of my Seattle Seahawks and they're rude to me, I think that would just end it for me altogether.
Well, I kind of had a little built-in mechanism. One of the things that led me into contacting famous people was I was always kind of enamored with them, mystified by them, without knowing the reasons. It's like, why is this person popular? Why do people want his autograph? And it's because they're famous, and they became famous by being able to hit a ball or sing a song or whatever it was. And I realized that the psyches, even as just a little kid, these people were different than me and different from a lot of people that I knew. And I wanted to know how and why, because as I grew older, you would see seemingly super great, famous people that should have the greatest lives, and they kill themselves. I noticed that at a very young age in the 60s. People have committed suicide forever. And I always thought that maybe if I liked that person and I let them know that I like them, maybe they'd have somebody extra to talk to, and it would prevent them from doing those kind of things that I still consider unnecessary. Easy for me to say, I'm not in their shoes, but so many people I know have done that, and a lot of them that I wasn't really close with, but I knew well enough, and they chose not to call me or anybody else, and boom, they're over. That always bugged me. But anyway, not to be so doom and gloom, but that kind of got my attention at a very young age. I remember when Marilyn Monroe, died, and now who knew what was behind that? There's a lot of stories there, but just the same, she got herself into a mess and didn't feel good about it, and she's gone. So I realized before I was out of high school, or even before I was out of grade school, that I probably wouldn't make it as a singer. I sang in a band when I was in grade school, and I was okay, but I was no Roger Daltrey or anybody like that. And that's when I started going to concerts and really amping it up with the music. I always loved music, and it was like another area of fame that I could explore, and maybe I could even figure out how to get a job out of this. Bill Graham was very well known throughout the 60s. And I looked, whenever I saw his name or a picture, I would watch him, because I was always struck by his presence, and we ended up becoming friends and working together. So that was fun. But again, it was all about like not knowing, because you don't know. I mean, when we're 10 or 15, even 20, we don't know what we want to do sometimes.
Yeah.
We're not prepared.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, if I had a boy, I have a daughter, but if I had a boy, I would either teach him how to kick that ball or hit that ball or sing high like Steve Perry, because there are things guys can do that are fun, and girls, of course.
Sure.
There's things everybody can do. They just got to put their minds to it and say, I'm going to do this, but it's got to be a reachable goal. And as a kid, I would start, my goals were getting some baseball cards signed or meeting so-and-so. Very few times was anybody rude to me. Most stars understand that this is part of the game, writing their name on pieces of paper and arms and boobs and pictures and wherever else.
Yeah,
right?
Sure.
So, the best one ever was Mickey Mantle.
Oh.
He ran me over in it. He wasn't driving. So he was on his way to the bus from, he was at the hotel. I think they were at the Knickerbocker or something in Chicago.
Okay.
And he had already conducted a signing that the hotel helped arrange, because there's so many people in the lobby looking for him for an autograph. And he came down. I mean, there were dozens of people in an otherwise pretty normal Chicago hotel lobby. He had them line them up. He signed one thing each, because all of us had a dozen baseball cards, right?
Sure. Or
pictures or balls or whatever. So he signs and he never looks up. I said, hey, can you write to Danny on there? He did look up for that. And he goes, anything else? Signed his name and handed it back to me. Then on his way out to the bus, I was talking to Jim Bouton, who was a pitcher for the Yankees and also a very famous writer in his own right. He wrote a book called Ball 4 that I think a movie, and there's a lot of controversy because he talked about what was going on behind closed doors on the planes and hotels, and the dressing rooms and all that. And a lot of players got pissed at him because he spilled some beans he probably shouldn't have.
Sounds like Jose Canseco.
He talked about how they ate bennies like jelly beans, to stay awake and all that. Anyway, Mickey's on his way towards the bus door, and I get between him and the bus door. And you don't do that to the Mick. He took me out, right? Jim Bouton catches me, and Whitey Ford catch me, and they go, don't be upset, kid. Mick had a tough night. So the thing that explains is what I say to people all the time. When you have a concert and you're setting up a show, and these people are driving in or flying in from God knows where. They're in the beginning of their tour, the end of their tour, the middle of the tour, whatever it is, and they're not at home. I've got the luxury of being home before I go down to the show at 5 or 6.
Sure.
They don't. This is what they're doing. This is work for them. Right. So we try to do our best to follow the advice with their concert writers of what they need. We want to make it as comfortable as possible every time we do a show. And think of how easy it is to get upset or frustrated during the course of a normal day, just doing what you normally do. How about adding living out of a suitcase or the back of a bus?
That's true.
People think it's glamorous or exciting or whatever. Well, it might be more than what you do, but after a while, it's a gig. It's a job, and maybe you do make more money, but you're never in your house.
Right. You don't get to enjoy it.
You don't get to go to the corner and buy a newspaper or well, wait a minute, or buy a tablet.
There you go. Right. Yeah. So
it's like people ask a lot of these people when they're on the road. That's their job, whether it's autographs or, can you talk to my sick daughter or do this or do that, whatever people do. And it's not easy, and I like to think between me and the people that work with me, we do a good job of anticipating that. And that's kind of become life's work, is making sure not only that you sell tickets, but when they get here, that they're happy to see you and they're happy to leave saying that was great and we'll do it again. And that's the lifeblood of the business.
Sure. So before we go into the music thing, there was one more sports thing I wanted to bring up. This was interesting that you had a friendship with Brian Picolo, who was a famous Bears running back. They made the movie about him, Brian's song. But you kind of reached out to him before anyone else knew who he was because you had read some article about him. And he thought you were kind of crazy. Like, why do you want my autograph? But you guys developed a friendship. And then he actually kind of was the one that taught you, because I guess you were kind of setting up these autograph sessions for some of the players. And he was the one, he paid you. And you're like, wait, you're paying me? And he's like, yeah, you should be getting money for this. So that kind of was a pivotal moment in your career, I would think, right?
Well, yeah, but at the time it wasn't a career, It was just me being a kid. I had no idea. It made sense to me.
Yeah.
It made absolute perfect sense. But he was the first one to give me any dough. And I tried to reach out to one of his daughters through Facebook or something, but I haven't yet. I really want to send his wife and the girls a copy of the book so they know something about their dad that they didn't know before. But he was a genuine guy, a very sweet man. And he was only, I was half his age. He was only, when I met him, about 22, I think, 23 maybe. And, but to me, he was a Chicago Bear, and he was a guy who's in Sports Illustrated getting a hug and a kiss from his wife and shaking hands with George Hallis, who, everybody in Chicago respected him. I'm glad that we met, and I'm glad we had whatever time we had. It was ridiculously short. He was 26 when he died. And he was such a good guy. James Caan did a really nice movie, and Brian saw about him. And I got to tell him so once, which was fun. And he loved that I knew him and I could tell him stuff. He goes, "Oh, I wish you were around when we were filming." I said, "Boy, do I ever."
Yeah.
It's one of the best movies ever made, about the illness as well as football.
Yeah. So, and then to move into the music thing, I found this interesting that you kind of discovered the Beatles in a way, or at least you were the first kid in your block to hear them. And you're trying to, this is so fascinating to me to think of you someone trying to convince people to listen to the Beatles. Like, hey, there's this new band, and people are like, nah, I don't know. And you had to and then of course they obviously blew up after Ed Sullivan, but talk about that, about finding the Beatles before anyone else. That's pretty cool.
That's it's kind of like the way things ended up or turned out the way that they did. They had to almost, because I was acquiring all of this information. It was a very inquisitive mind. And my brother and I used to go on Friday afternoons after school. We'd go to the local record store. I can't remember the name of it. It wasn't like a Tower Records but it was a nice old-fashioned record store. They still sold sheet music, which was, a great deal of income for composers and artists and publishers back in the day. Not so much anymore. But that was one way people used to make money. Oh yeah, they used to be able to sell their recordings too. How did they? Anyway, that's another story. But we used to go into the record store. No, we didn't get sent to one of these. I hate listening to music on a phone. I despise it. Okay, I'll do it if I'm in the dentist chair.
Really?
It's the only time. I don't like it. I like headphones, but I'm a vinyl guy. I'm a CD guy. I'm a radio guy. That's how I get my music. I'll listen to it on the computer when I'm working or whatever. I like listening to a radio station. But I mean, how many times in the last 10 years have you been listening to the radio in your car and you get to wherever you're going and you can't get out because the radio is so riveting?
Yeah, I mean, sometimes with like with talk radio, actually, with like Howard Stern, if I'm listening to a really good interview.
Howard doesn't count.
Yeah.
Howard's the king of all media.
Yeah.
But that's what I'm talking about. It's like there used to be times when I'd be here and they'd be playing something on the radio I haven't heard before, and you can't get out of the car.
Yeah.
You know, or you run into the car or you yell ahead, turn on the radio, you know, and so you can not miss anything.
Right.
And that's the way radio used to be. Now, you know, it's so researched to death. Unfortunately, they won't play obscure music by people that you know.
Right.
The name's already there. It's already broken. I couldn't get, I complain about this one all the time. I like to promote Jeff Beck shows. He's one of the greatest ever, right?
For sure.
And when was the last time you heard a Jeff Beck song on the radio?
I mean, I don't even listen to everything. Ever? Yeah, no, I don't even listen to the radio because now you can hear everything on like Spotify and you get those playlists, and that's how I find out about new bands.
See, there's no humanity for me on Spotify. You know,
so.
I mean, I get it. I mean, if that's all you're looking for is to get music delivered, no matter how, all those streaming services are great.
Mm-hmm.
But you know, when I'm listening to a record, I like holding the cover. I like reading it. I like checking the words out.
For sure.
I like handing it to somebody going, you know, while they're listening, going, wow, this is good. Look at the cover. You know, I mean, the whole experience is lost for so many people these days. I mean, they barely have any image whatsoever in their mind of what the group is about, either through their artwork or their pictures or their faces. You know, they barely know their names. Back in the day, I hate the olden days, so I'll say back in the day, you know, you would know of your favorite group. You would know every guy in that group. You'd know where they lived. You know what their families look like in some case. I mean, you got to know them at a distance, and they became like your friends and your babysitters.
Right. But also, don't you think
like when I could go to a record store and the guy realized I wasn't just some goofy kid, I was 7 or 8 years old. I was a goofy kid, but I could go and say, what about this record? What about that? They give you a little top 40 survey that I have in the book. And we watched that stuff. I mean, that was one of my, between baseball cards and that top 40 survey, these were my forms of reference that I was developing at a very early age about learning how to figure things out for myself. Like, I wonder if that guy's a good hitter. And I figured out how to do batting averages when I was 5, or earn run averages. You know, I mean, I knew all that stuff. So when it came to be in school in 2nd, 3rd grade, and they're trying to teach you how to add and multiply and divide all that, I didn't really know the words about how that was called. But I said, oh, you mean, and I'd work out a little batting average formula for a nun. I'm 7 or 8 years old. They're going, why do you know that? You know, and that's how I learned. And same with Beatles and standings. Like, wait a minute, Beatles were here, please me, for a week. You mean the next week they're gone? Yeah, nothing happened with the record. What do you mean nothing happened with the record? It's a great record. So here I am, I'm a midget promo guy. You know, and I'm looking up
at nice
these
way to put it.
tall people going, what do you mean it's over? And they're going, go away, kid. You know, it's like, and then the Ed Sullivan show happened, and it proved my point. I was vindicated. And that grew on me, that feeling of satisfaction, not rejection.
Right.
I mean, it didn't matter to me that they didn't get it. I got it. And
right.
You gotta have confidence in your decisions and your taste, you know, otherwise you're sunk.
Sure. So then talk about how you got your first kind of interaction with the promotion business was with this Yes concert that you kind of didn't even really get hired for, but you kind of pretended to work for? How did don't tell the story.
I wasn't pretending. What happened was the day before, this was in Berkeley in the summer of 72. Sounds like a movie.
Yeah.
And I moved there from Chicago, and I fully intended on living there. I brought my stereo, which had a couple of big speakers, not huge, but big. And I brought all my records with me. I had a lot of records. And then I had some clothes, and that was my belongings. And I thought I was going to stay out there. But in 1972, there weren't a lot of jobs for people who had no skills. I just got out of high school. I wasn't trained at anything. And I really didn't know what, but I do know that I was drawn there by the magnetism of the Fillmore, the name, the vibe. Haight-Ashbury, Bill Graham, Berkeley, all these names that come into a kid's mind at a very impressionable age. And I just knew I wanted to go there. So I went, and I blasted a few months, and then I had to come back because I just had no money. My dad says, "You want more money? Come on home. We'll talk about it." He goes, "I'm not sending you anymore." And it wasn't like they sent me much of anything anyways. I got a couple of token payments or just to make sure I ate. And they just said, "Come home." So I did. And then I moved back out to Arizona the following year. But in the meantime, the guy that lived downstairs from me, a guy named Jerry, he was a usher at the Berkeley Community Theater, which I didn't know. And Bill Graham was putting on a lot of shows there. About a 3,500 seat auditorium that's on the what do you call it? The Berkeley High School campus. It's just a huge place for a high school. And I met a guy called Twigs, and he was the Allman Brothers road manager. I guess he had killed a promoter for not paying him one night, so he went to jail for a while before the Allman Brothers picked him up.
Okay.
Yeah, don't mess with Twigs. Twigs ended up jumping out of an airplane, and his chute didn't open some years later.
Jeez.
I think I mentioned that in the story. Anyway, Twigs came out to the soundboard, and I met him, and we just started talking. He was so nice to me, and he gave me a pass, go backstage, get a drink with the guys, tell them I sent you. And boom, I'm in with the Allman Brothers. This is right after Dwayne died. And I was talking to him, said, I really want this. I want to get in this business. I mean, what I envisioned was getting on the bus with him after the show and going to the next gig. That's what I wanted to do. But that didn't happen. I couldn't do anything. I don't know what I was going to do, but all I knew was I wanted in.
Sure.
So he said, tomorrow, he goes, when's the next show here? I said, yes, it's here tomorrow. He goes, get on their truck, be there waiting for them. They'll probably come in around 9 or 10 o'clock tomorrow morning. And he said, I'll find out for you. And he found out, and it was like 9 o'clock. So I got there about 8:45 and walked over there from this apartment we were sharing. And I got on the truck and just started unloading gear. But then I thought, well, how are the Bill Graham people going to feel about me being on their truck? So I acted like I was English when I came down the ramp, and they thought I was with Yes. So, and the Yes people thought I was with Bill. So it was perfect until Bill showed up for dinner. But by now I'm in heaven because I just got my first 3 squares, meals in weeks. I had a delicious breakfast and a beautiful lunch. Here I am sitting down. I got a big old meal plate, and I feel somebody picking me up on my shirt, and it's Bill Graham. He goes, who is this kid? He goes, this guy's been around all day long, and none of you knew he didn't work for us. And he looks at me, he goes, you got some chutzpah, kid.
Yeah.
And he goes, but good for you. He goes, that's how I guess it. You got to get it done. I said, I wrote and asked for a job, and you guys said you didn't have any, but I helped all day long. You needed the help. He goes, yeah, but we don't have the budget. I said, I'm working for free. He goes, how long is that going to last? I said, not very. I said, but I do like the food.
Yeah.
In other words, I was around what I wanted to be around, but I had no money, but I was eating.
Sure.
So it wasn't a bad day.
Yeah. So that gave you a taste. And then, like you said, you went to Arizona because you had visited in spring break and you took acid on Camelback Mountain. You're like, I'm moving to Arizona. So this is a crazy story too. So you're driving down the street and you pick up a hitchhiker. I mean, I don't know what the odds of this are. And he happens to be the set designer. And this was on Van Buren. And he was a set designer for Alice Cooper, right? I'll let you tell the rest of that story. Yeah.
Yeah. My brother had sent me $80 to buy this 63 spray painted yellow Dodge Valiant, 3 on the tree, fun car. But it had a great air conditioner that was added afterwards that worked great. And he was moving to Arizona, which he did. But in the meantime, I bought this car for him. So he had a car when he got out here. And I'm driving down the street and there's this guy who looks like straight out of like Easy Rider. You know what I mean? Like, the scene where the guy takes him to the commune. Remember that guy with the glasses and so
long hair.
Larry with his hair really long, and he's on the side of the road, no shoes on. He gets in the car. He goes, would you mind taking me to a store in Tempe for some shoes? I said, no problem. So I went. We found a place. I knew a place that he could go. Not that I had money to buy shoes for myself. And he bought himself a pair, and he invited me to come down and work the show in Tucson a couple of days later. And it was Alice Cooper's opening of $1 Billion Babies, and which was a huge tour. And of all people, Bill Graham is promoting it. So I went down there for the show and worked at it, met Alice in the afternoon, wandered into his dressing room just like on Wayne's World, and hey, come on in, have a beer. Exactly like he was in the movie.
Were you like Wayne? Or were you like, I'm not worthy, I'm not...
Oh no, I was see, I was never like that. I was way cooler than that. Although inside I was jumping up and down.
Sure. Okay. You hit it well. Gotcha.
I mean, I was cooler than that, and I was like, sure, I'll sit down and have a beer with Alice, and I'm going, yes.
That's awesome.
So about 3 or 4 beers in, Shep comes in. And he, who the hell are you? What are you doing here? And Alice goes, oh, that's my friend. He goes, how long have you known him? He goes, 10 minutes. He goes, great. What are you doing here? I said, I'm doing security for the show tonight. And he goes, great. I'm going to have a drunk guy in front of the stage. I said, everybody else will be drunk.
True.
So anyway, he was right. But I never got drunk. Alice kept drinking, and I had to go, and
Sure.
I probably had 6.
Oh wow, that's okay.
Yeah, but I could drink beer back then.
You had the tolerance for sure. I'm sure Alice did too. So I
get too full, but and then Shep and Bill got into a fist fight and almost killed each other. I couldn't believe what I was seeing.
That's like one of your first shows, and that happened.
Yeah. Apparently, Bill didn't realize that Alice's dad was who he was. And he put him out to the audience, and Shep either saw him doing it or found out and flipped out. I don't know if he wasn't wearing his pass. I never got that info. It was none of my business.
Sure.
But boy, they got into it. They knocked me over, and they created quite a stir backstage. And there's Alice Cooper on stage with 10,000 people, and everybody's going nuts. It was quite a scene.
So this around that time in 74 that you borrowed $11,000 and you started your first concert promotion business, Sundown Productions. And your first show was like some sort of jazz rock thing in Tucson. And you actually lost $3,000 doing that, but you kept going.
Well, I don't remember what it lost. Where'd you get the $3,000?
I don't know. I heard you say it in an interview.
No, that's probably about right.
Okay.
I don't know what it was, but yeah, 1,000 people came out of about 2,200. And I had Journey opening the show. And then when they found out I hired Journey, they made me fire him. that I fired
Oh,
Journey from opening for $500 because
wow.
there was no room on the stage, and I didn't ask. I mean, they would have just said, "Hey, nothing against Journey,
Yeah.
but there's no room on the stage for me, and we're going to do a 3.5 hour show, so forget it. Tell them they can't come." So that made it interesting. I mean, it's I was going to do Herbie Hancock and Weather Report, but that got postponed, and I lost Weather Report. And by the way, I didn't get loaned the thousand, the 11 grand. It was my dad and a friend, and his
Oh,
dad, and we were all officers in this corporation that we started. I mean,
okay.
it was meant to succeed. It was designed to work, but the problem was, they showed a very great amount of support for me by doing it, but I had never done it before. It didn't mean I didn't do a good job or it didn't come out good. It's just, you know, when you're new at anything, much less concert promoting,
Mm-hmm.
you end up getting groups. Even in Phoenix at the time, there was only one promoter in Phoenix, and he did shows at the Celebrity Theater, which is the theater in the Round that I work in now, one of the places that I use regularly. And um, it was a very difficult time at any time to start anything like this. But I ended up exhausting that 11 grand, and we bankrupted the company. So I
Right. That
mean,
wasn't after 3 shows.
before I was even going, I mean,
Yeah.
I barely gotten started and I was bankrupt. So what ended up following after that, it wasn't disastrous. I mean, I think they were both equipped to be able to take a hit of 5 or 6 grand each. Maybe my dad wasn't as much as the other guy, but that was my college education,
Mm.
basically, from him, because I didn't go to college. There's a long story there. It's not really even that interesting, but it just didn't work out. But from this experience, it led to another experience, which was I would get to work on a show here or there, just be involved. Then I got a Jeff Beck show with Mahavishnu again. The next year, somebody else backed it. It didn't do well. I made some money and I made some more chops, and I got a little bit further along in the city and in the market, industry wise. And we did a couple shows in the fall, and finally the next year, the breakthrough was when I got called from Bill Graham to help him put on the Stars Born concert that was here in Phoenix, designed to draw a big crowd, so Barbara and Chris Christopherson could have a big crowd to film some music scenes for the movie. So Bill had put together Santana and Montrose, Graham Central Station, and he called me up, and I was working in a waterbed store, right? And I'm a sales dude in a waterbed store, and he calls me up and he wants to know, who do you like out of these three? ZZ Top, Edgar and Johnny Winter, or Peter Frampton? And I explained to him why not on the other two, but I said Peter Frampton's your guy. And he goes, that's who I wanted too. He goes, they just put out that new album, Frampton Comes Alive, and that was recorded at the Winterland, where he did a lot of shows at the time. And I said, yeah, I know. He goes, you didn't say that just because of that. I said, no, why would I do that? I mean, what if he was a stiff? I said, I think he'd be great. And so we hit it off. That worked out well. And then the following fall, a friend of mine told me about this new nightclub in Tempe called Dooley's. And I went right over there and I walked in and not demanded, but I asked for the job of booking national bands in there, because all they were doing at the time was bar bands that did covers
Mm.
of other people. And, like they do 3, 4, 5 sets a night. Very heavy duty jock bar. It was not a freaky scene until I got there. And then we started putting shows in there. It was a great room for concerts. The stage and the sound and lights weren't as good as I would have liked for that room, but they were definitely adequate. And some of the people that played on that gear, just, incredible people. And that's really what kicked it off into high gear.
Yeah. And then now, I mean, the rest is history. Then you had your own thing, and then you worked for LiveNation for a little bit, and then you sold that, and then you went back out on your own, right?
Yeah, kind of. I mean, I did. But what happened was House of Blues wanted to buy me, and they were Universal owned them at the time. And I was going to make a deal with them. And at the very last minute, there was a .com crash during the year. I think it was during either 99 or 2000. And they put it all to the side of doing that, because there were these people at SFX who were already doing that, and they're putting together concert promoters and venues from all around the country in one company. And I really resisted that. I didn't like it. How old was I at the time? I was maybe 45 or so.
Okay.
And I didn't want to do anything like that. I like being my own boss. I've never really worked for anybody as an adult. The whole idea sucked to me, and not being in charge. And it turned out to be true. I shouldn't have done it, because what happened was, now I was just somebody's boy, I mean, they owned me. And so this SFX guy, the whole time, we never knew that. I didn't know it anyway. He had planned on putting this thing into a ball and selling it to Clear Channel Radio, which is what he did. So all of a sudden, here's these guys who 1 minute were their own bosses and the kings of their own little fiefdoms all over the country.
Yeah.
Suddenly we're all under one roof. And then suddenly we're all involved with a super right, conservative, Christian bunch of people at Clear Channel in San Antonio, Texas. But we were just, now it's like, this is what happens when you get into big business. We could have all said no. And so many things that are going on today would not be happening. But we didn't say no, and they all happened.
Yeah, that's Howard Stern's story too, right? Wasn't he for Clear Channel, and that didn't work out? Was Howard Stern, wasn't he at Clear Channel? Isn't that why he left for Sirius?
I don't know, but that was the radio. The thought process was, if we've got radio and you've got concerts to sell tickets, we can do that together. Forget about how that could look, or antitrust and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, monopoly or something. Yeah.
But the fact is the radio people at Clear Channel did not embrace the concert promoters, and it was a different division, and it never worked out. So they somehow made that deal with the government to unload all this debt that they had taken on for buying all these concert promoters and all these venues. And they forgave a lot of it with tax credits and so forth, as I understand it. And it was put out onto its own separate island, and that became LiveNation.
Okay.
So I worked for the other two companies in the first 5 years, and then LiveNation for the next 5 years. And after that 5 years was up, we took a sabbatical from each other.
Gotcha.
And I started, doing shows again on my own.
That's good. Yeah, you're probably a lot happier not having a boss and being able to do it the way you want to do it.
I would, if they were bosses that knew how to work with people instead of, it's like we became widgets as far as I'm concerned.
Okay.
And it's like they had people in LA or Canada or New York or whatever who were named their talent buyers for a lot of the tours. So guys like me, regardless of the fact that we're 30, 40 years into this and have a lot of experience, more than most personally, with a lot of these bands that are getting booked, I wasn't allowed anywhere near the table to be one of the big boys and sit there and do it, even though somebody had paid me a fortune for my company. And I'm sitting there going, why did you guys do that if you're not going to use me? You know, nobody wants to be second or third string quarterback. You know,
Right? No.
And I was used to being first string, and I did good at it. I mean, I did good enough to get a nice figure to sell my company, but that was to be used. And as it was in the first few years, we did great. And the LiveNation thing happened, and they bought a building in Phoenix for me to book shows in, and it turned out the deal they made was absolutely retarded, and they lost their asses on it. But the problem was, even though I didn't make the deal for the building, they did, and our unit still had to cover the costs of what that deal was that they made, even though I didn't do it. And we went from making money to losing giant amounts of money.
Yikes.
As a result of that, just in one signature, boom. And you know, there were people there that blamed us for being the losers. But bottom line is, if somebody says, hey, Danny, why don't you buy Candlebox and pay him $250,000? Well, I'm going to draw 300 people. So I'm going to lose my butt. The same thing happened with this building. And that created a very sore spot of contention among us.
Which building was that in Phoenix?
I don't know what it's called now. Something like Arizona Federal.
Oh.
So it used to be the Dodge Theater.
Oh, okay. Yeah, gotcha. All right.
Very nice theater.
So,
we
very
were
cool.
Involved in from the very beginning. In fact, me and Terry, who's still at LiveNation, and a few of my other friends and partners joined in, and we bought a unit of that hall, and then gave it back later and said, "Give us our money back," because they just didn't know what they were doing with it. You know, I mean, but this, you know, you try to overstep your bounds sometimes, and it's a good idea if everything works around you. But when it doesn't, and you're just kind of driving around in the dark, it's not so good.
Gotcha. I had a question. I've watched a lot of interviews with you, and no one's ever asked this. To me, this would be the most interesting question for your job. Like, how often do people ask you for concert tickets? Is that something that you're just used to? Because I feel like of all the benefits of what you do, I feel like that'd be the most annoying thing is people always asking me for tickets. Or do you have someone else that deals with that? Like, hey, talk to Sherry or whatever, and they just deal with all those things.
Well, yeah, there's other people that deal with that, but I don't get asked that often. Usually, I used to a lot more, but it used to be that they were fair. They weren't as expensive as they are now. And you can't stick your friends or people that deserve or require or need comps. You can't stick them in the best seats. I mean, so it's like, here's my answer. You need tickets for a show? All I got are these, which are up there.
Okay. There you go.
You want to be on the floor?
You got to pay.
They're $125 each.
Okay.
Go buy them.
There you go.
I mean, it's like I'll always take care of a friend.
Yeah.
With tickets and generally offer them if I have them. But it's not friends that really ever ask for them. It's people kind of the next level.
Acquaintances.
Yeah. And generally I go, we got tons of tickets. Oh, great. Call this person. She'll sell them to you.
There you go.
But the thing is, you didn't have to get in line on the computer in the store somewhere. Yeah. You're just calling up, give your credit card, boom. You got something that somebody else planned on doing for weeks when they heard about this concert going on sale.
Right.
So, there's still, most people are happy with that.
That's good.
I have been yelled at in years about somebody saying, what do you mean you're going to charge me for a ticket?
Oh.
The only people you charge for tickets are people who are never going to do things for you.
Gotcha.
And,
And what about, do you have now, have it go the other way? Like, do you have artists that reach out to you that want you to set up a concert for them? Like, do you ever have to turn people down because it may not be profitable? Like, maybe there's some artist that's like, hey, I want you to set up this concert for me. And you're like, you have to be straight with them and be like, this isn't going to make money.
There's a lot of good answers for that. Do you want to be my partner on the show?
There you go.
That one stops them in their tracks every time. It's like they'll call up and say, give me $75,000 for so-and-so. And I go, why would I do that? I'd be in a mental hospital in 20 minutes if somebody finds out I did that.
Yeah.
It's like the thing that agents hate, they hate articulate and intelligent people. They want dummies. No offense to my friends, the agents. And most of the good ones aren't like this.
Sure.
But there's a lot of people out there who will say to you, well, let's book so-and-so. And okay. And I'm thinking my living room, and they're thinking an arena.
Right.
And you gotta put it straight. It's like, if I do this show the way you're asking me to do it, I'm gonna lose minimum X amount of dollars.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have that kind of money. In fact, I just turned my brother down for a loan to redo his kitchen for $30,000. Okay. I'd rather give him the money.
Sure.
But I'm not doing that either.
So let's talk about what you do. So you make money on the ticketing fees. And so I think you said your sweet spot right now is kind of like those 4,000 seaters. And that if you're doing it right, you're making like 20 to 40 grand per show. And you're trying
let me correct something. Sorry. I don't make the money on the ticketing fees. What I make the money on is the ticket price. Ticketing fees are those other things.
Okay.
That's what Ticketmaster makes you pay that shit.
Oh, okay.
I'm talking the hard ticket. I get that, and out of that, I got to pay the band and the building and the advertising and the catering and the
so you're fronting it. Basically, is you're taking the risk and fronting all the money and then hoping that you make a profit on the back end.
What you're doing is you're fronting all the risk, and at the back end, you're saying no matter what happens, I'm paying all the bills.
Okay. And then so advertising is a big piece of that for you, right? You still do some print and billboards, radio stations, social media. Sure. Do you do that all yourself, or do you have because you have people that work for you?
I have a small staff here, and we handle all that stuff between us. We split up the workload. I do a lot of the advertising. I do almost all the talent buying, and everybody else chips in with their own part of promotion and social media and layouts and ticketing and contracts and insurance. There's a lot of things that we all have to do. The accounting.
Yeah.
All this stuff. I mean, it's
what about the scheduling? Is that hard? Because now if you want to set up, if you wanted to have, I don't know, ELO come here or something, like it has to work with a band. Sometimes they have to be on a tour, right? Like, does that sometimes turn into a nightmare? Like, hey, we're going to be in Vegas this night. We want to come to Arizona this night, but then you've got to get the theater that's got to be open. Is it a lot of scheduling challenges, right?
It's not really a nightmare. I mean, that's what we do.
Okay.
That's how it's done. Mm-hmm. That's really how it's done. Like, somebody somewhere is booking an act, and whoever's booking the act, depending on how big the act is, generally has a big agent. And those agents have been around the block many, many, many times, usually with us, or somebody else here in the city. But they know instantly where the band ought to be playing. Even if they've never lived here before, they know from their other shows that are similar in audience type or music type or nature in general, where these kind of shows should go play. Mm-hmm. So they'll say, and one day they'll talk to every promoter that they're going to talk to for this tour. And they're going to say, we're starting April 4th in California. We're going to go up and over, or we're going to go over to you and up to Colorado. We'll go pick up Seattle, Portland, and then we're going to move over to the east. And give us your available dates at the hall between this date and this date, because that's where it's going to fall depending on which direction we go, east, west, north, south, whatever. And that's called routing a tour. And that's what they do every time. The goal being to place the dates just far enough apart where you don't want to drive to Phoenix or Tucson. I mean, we can do shows in Phoenix or Tucson, and Flagstaff, because they're all separate markets. Nobody's going to drive really to Tucson on a Tuesday night, much less a Saturday night. They'll go on a weekend, but a weeknight probably not. Or people won't come down on a weekday from Flagstaff or Prescott or wherever, unless it's a weekend, because they just can't go to bed that late and get up the next day. So it's not hard for us because we're not routing the whole country. We're routing maybe 2, 3, 4 dates.
Is it true that LA gets some of the prime? It seems like a lot of the shows will be in LA on a Friday and then they get Phoenix on a Monday. Or is that true? Or is that just coincidence sometimes?
Both.
Both? Okay.
It depends. Remember, forget about the calendar for a minute. It depends on when you made the phone call to hold that date for the show. So like it's December now. Now let's say we could do shows in April. I'd love to be doing some in April, by the way.
I'd love to see some.
I would call the hall up. Maybe the hall's already booked.
Okay.
So you go to the agent, he goes, April 4th through 15, what's open? You go, April 6, April 10, April 12, and 13. And that's what you got to work with. And then he's got to do that with each of the other cities.
Okay.
And then put it in order so the band is driving the least amount of distance to the next show.
Sure. So then talk about, you said that tenacity is the thing that makes you successful, and that you don't take no for an answer, but you're not like super pushy either. So a lot of it is negotiation. It's kind of like you said, it's swimming with sharks and you're one of the sharks. So explain to me the negotiation aspect and how you kind of develop those skills over time.
Again, it goes to what I was just saying about the agents, knowing intuitively where the band should be playing, like what's the right feel, where do other bands play like this. Same thing happens when you're trying to figure out how much to pay somebody or how much to charge for tickets. We don't just grab those numbers out of the air like some people I hear think they just charge as much as they can. We look very, very closely at all the other shows of the same genre. Right, over
Smart.
the last year or two, and ticket prices, I hope, have hit their ceiling for the most part of where they're going to be. I mean, it's like they go anywhere from $5 to 5,000. But that's how you negotiate, is by bringing out the information,
the numbers.
Yeah, I mean,
sure.
It's like, look, the last 3 times in town, you did this. You don't deserve a $20,000 raise. Everybody wants a raise.
Sure.
Right?
Yeah.
But these people, they got agents that speak for them, so they have no conscience about it whatsoever. But if you go to a band member and start talking about that business, they'll just go all fetal on you. Don't talk to me about that. I don't want to, because they don't have that kind of makeup. That's not their constitution.
Yeah, no, for sure. Explain this concept. This is interesting to me. I'm kind of trying to do the same thing with my podcast. The concept of like baby bands, like booking these bands before they get really big, and then they have a relationship with you. Now they're comfortable with you. So when they want to book shows, they're going to come to you because they're already working with you.
Right. What's the question?
Oh, just that concept. Like what is there bands that you're working with now that are kind of baby bands, or what are some of the bands that you've worked with that you started out when they were baby bands?
There's 2 other promoters in the market now, 3 other promoters. There's LiveNation, Charlie Levy, who has the Van Buren, which he shares with LiveNation. He also has a small place called the Crescent Ballroom, which is 500.
Yeah, I love those places.
There's also the Marquee Theater in Tempe, and all these people worked for me at one time or another. And now they have all these facilities. I am basically, by and large, blocked out of working with baby bands because these guys do that every single day, and I don't. And they have the rooms. They have the rooms necessary to do them. Now, if somebody came along and asked me to do it, and I wanted to do it, I could call them up and make a deal with them to go into those rooms. But bringing me into the picture of those concert rooms just adds more. I mean, it could be positive, but it can also be negative from the standpoint that we're all going to be looking at, the promoters are going to be looking at earning less money, and because we're sharing it. But sometimes that can work. But when I used to have dualies and I used to book all the other little clubs around here, or had people that booked them with me and for me, it was different. We were up to 200 club shows per year in the mid 90s. And which is a lot. Think about how many nights a week that is.
Yeah, that's
and
a lot.
Times there's 5 club shows in one night.
Wow.
And you know, I'll be honest with you. I might look like Dick Clark, but I'm not Dick Clark. I don't have the energy to go out every single night anymore.
Sure.
And you know, unless it's, you know, I mean, if I'm doing a run of dates with Alan Parsons and we're all over the place and we go out for a week or two, I have plenty of energy for that. But going down there for every new band,
yeah,
you know what I mean?
That's a lot.
I mean, there's a lot of them that are really good too, and I'll go see them.
Sure.
When they come around, but I just don't have. I can't do that anymore.
Sure.
And I love new music, and I love hearing them, and I love the energy and the enthusiasm and the excitement and the fact that they're not tired of everything already.
That's great.
I mean, like so many of these other bands that get a little bit long in the tooth.
Sure. Well, so some of the, I mean, you've worked with so many bands, and I'm sure you talk about most of these in your book, but give us like a little bit of taste, like with the Beatles. So that was one of the first ones, obviously. Have you met all the Beatles, or just, did you ever meet Lennon?
Never.
No. But
we were holding a date when he got killed at Symphony Hall. I think he would have moved into an arena anywhere, but he wasn't sure, and he was very humble about it from what I gathered. I didn't talk to him ever or anything. And but he was going to do music halls at the beginning of that, and he got killed before they really even got a chance to do anything with that, which is a shame considering how great that record was they put together. But the other groups that I got at the very beginning that were really fun was like Cheap Trick.
Oh yeah.
I did them for $1 for 3 sets at Dooley's one night. They played. It was over a period of 4.5 hours.
Wow, it's a long time.
For $1, and they got 60% of the door.
What a deal! That's amazing.
Talking Heads, I paid I didn't give them a guarantee, but they came in for a $6 ticket, and they made 60% of the door. So they made 60% of $4,000.
Nice. And then
fabulous show. And then the next time they came to town, I think we did them at the Mesa Amphitheater, which held 4,000 people.
Oh yeah, that's huge.
My favorite, there's 3 of them that come to mind that were 3 of the biggest turnarounds, fastest ones ever. Jane's Addiction, Alanis Morrisette, and Pat Benatar.
Oh, yeah.
I started each of them in nightclubs, 3 of them, 400, 500 seat nightclubs. Within 6 months, we booked them. Well, the 2 of them we booked in the Mesa Amphitheater. And the next one, Pat Benatar, she went from the club to Compton Terrace, which was the big outdoor amphitheater here at the time. And I had to call up the agent and say, hey, don't forget me here. I broke that act in this town. And they gave me half the date.
Nice.
And the amphitheater people didn't like it a bit. And they said, well, go somewhere else if you don't include them in, which is what they should say.
Yeah, that's good. Loyalty. That's important.
And we, and then on both Jane's and on Alanis, we went club, Mesa Amphitheater, and arena, all within 12 months.
Okay. Wow.
Which is astounding when you think about how fast that is.
Yeah, that grew. What about
but that's how primed and ready people were for this message and this music that these people made. They made perfect albums.
Yeah.
At the right time.
Yeah.
People always want to know, how do you do that? Well, I don't know, because I'd be doing it if I could. But you're the songwriter. Yeah. Quit writing all that drivel. Write me a hit. One time.
Yeah.
That's all you need. Because, most bands, if they're around for a while, they've got a following.
Sure.
And people like them, but they're not big. and they're not touring, and they're not going all over the world. And their kids aren't saying to these other people, "What do you do for a living, Dad?" You sit around and play your guitar. It's hard. It's a very hard life. It's a very tough business.
Absolutely. What about you said Motley Crue is mentioned in the book. Did you have a run-in with them or other like the hair bands at all? Did you ever have?
I loved Motley Crue. They were fun. Tommy and I were really, really are still good friends. We don't talk that often, but love Tommy. I love them all. I've had really good times with them from time to time. What happened with a lot of my bands that I grew up with that I broke. I mean, I was a bigger promoter than a lot of the bands were then. When in the 70s, say the 80s and 90s, when a new group comes along, I'm the guy. And then suddenly they're the guy.
Sure,
You change seats with some bands really fast. And I'm so happy for them when that happens. But what happens now is with the Motleys or even my friend Alice, they get on a tour with somebody and LiveNation or AEG says, here's so much money and you're going to do 40 shows for us in between here and here. Maybe on some of the nights off in between, if you want to add some of your own shows, go ahead. But we're doing these markets and our theaters and I get left out, which is awful. And it's a terrible feeling. But I understand. I mean, it's simply business. Nobody says they hate you or they don't like you. They're just going, look, somebody just gave this tour $30 million to do, to go around for a couple of months. You're out. We'll see you next time.
Jeez.
Or we'll, in many cases, though, when they do really well, that big company up there, they don't want me doing anything with them. They want to have them around when it's time to come back around too. There's only so many groups that can draw. And I've been saying this for years. I mean, I tried to tell these guys who have all these deep pockets and all this access to money, buy radio stations. Let's recreate MTV. Your music is the business of your company. So you have to constantly build on it and do new things and bring more fun to the table. And to me, the only way to bring more fun to the music party is to create more big bands. And how do you create big bands? Discover them when they're young and they're talented and all they think about is writing and playing and going out and doing gigs. That's all they think about. They haven't gotten the serious girlfriends yet. They're not married. They don't have kids. That's when you got to create these shows and that stuff. Later on, all that's going to happen. It's all going to mellow out and the wildness will subside mostly, but you'll have a living. You'll have a career, and I mean, these guys today, it's like, the people that are 50, 60, 70 years old that are still going out there touring when they can, the smart ones made enough dough where they can withstand having some time off right now. So some of them didn't, though. Some of them are just like everybody else and live week to week, which is too bad.
Yeah.
This whole thing has thrown such a crazy twist into everybody's life and career. I know I'm looking forward to it coming back and getting our shows back on sale and promoting them and everything. It's been a god awful year, for everybody.
Absolutely. Who's the craziest band that you ever ran into? Was it Motley Crue? Did you ever have a run-in with Guns N' Roses? I mean, they were pretty wild back in the day.
I had wilder times with Motley.
Really?
GNR were different. Loved them all good guys. Duff was great. Didn't really know
Izzy?
Didn't know Izzy or Steven all that well because they weren't there for the whole time. But nice guys though. Slash and I are very good. What a good guy he is. But Motley was very out in the open with their fun.
Mm-hmm.
Like Sam Kinison, for example.
Right.
You know, and remember, this was the 80s, and we were all much younger and getting our first taste of success and money and fame and all that stuff. I mean, that's very exciting to low income kids like us when all of a sudden I'm sitting there selling concerts, $6, $10 a ticket, but we're selling 15,000 tickets, and I'm looking at the night. I got $100,000 in front of me. I've never seen that in my life, you know, and it turns your head. You know,
yeah,
you got to watch your ass, man, because it'll get you. I mean, it's like a disease. You know, now older. I mean, I need to have it to tell me that I'm doing the right things and paying my bills. When I can't do that anymore is when I stop. And that's when everybody should stop.
Mm-hmm.
But I guess I haven't screwed it up bad enough yet because I'm still here.
Yeah, and you still enjoy it, right? You still like doing it. I mean, once you can do it again, once shows come back, which is hopefully soon.
It was nice to recount all this stuff, and not all of it, but a good deal of it, and actually put it in a book.
Yeah.
It was a real effort and very difficult. Everybody around here can attest to it because they're all involved in one way or another. And it was really a marathon, really, not a sprint. And it's doing really well. People are really liking it. And I'm happy about that.
Yeah, and it comes in a
book about rock and roll.
Yeah. Is there anything, any musician or athlete or other celebrity that you haven't met or you wanted to work with that's still on your bucket list?
You know, there's not too many. There's not too many. You know, you mentioned John Lennon before, but the guys that I didn't work with, it was just because they were before me. You know?
Okay.
You know, the Elvis, the Jimi Hendrix. I never got to do The Who with Keith Moon, but I did The Who. I see you're wearing the shirt.
Yeah.
I got to do a number of different things with The Who and Bill Curbishley and you know, Zeppelin and Priest, which Bill also works with. You know, I'm trying to think of I never did Randy Newman. I always wanted to do him.
Yeah.
I wanted to do Leonard Cohen and came this close. Got to see him, got to meet him, but never got to do a show with Leonard Cohen. That was a bad one that I missed. But honestly, I mean, I haven't counted because I can't find some of the years of the lists of the shows that we did. But I figure I'm around 11 to 12,000 shows.
Wow, so, that's a lot.
You know, that's including multiples with everybody. So, you know, the bands that they came before me that I didn't get to do. I never got to do Jefferson Airplane, but I met all of them. I love Grace Slick. All the Grateful Dead doing them was nothing short of fantastic. I got most everybody. I think most of my bucket list is achieved.
That's very cool. Yeah,
I still like to write a hit song though.
Or you still playing? You still play the guitar?
No, I dabble once in a while. I like to play drums, but I don't have time to play very much. Billy Cobham gave me his drums.
Oh, okay.
And believe me when I tell you, I don't play like him.
Oh,
he's the greatest, man.
Yeah, I like to end each episode with a charity. Is there a charity that you work with that you like to promote here?
You know, when I did this book, it just occurred to me that maybe as a just a little freaky thing on the side, I'd offer to deliver it personally to your house for $100. And so we did 32 of those. That I went out, I drove myself. I had people with me once in a while, but mostly by myself. And I met all these people that bought the book and paid an extra $100. And we did pictures and sign, and a couple of them were nice enough to give me wine, and which is nice. And we give that to Save Our Stages.
Oh yeah, that's a good one.
You know, because there's so many people out there all over the country buildings, the halls, the venues, and all the people that work in them. That, I mean, I know they probably got some kind of unemployment money or hopefully or something to help them through this while all the shows are down. But in the meantime, at least that's going to help some of them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And yeah, that's
okay.
Normally I would go to being a cancer survivor. I generally will go to a kids cancer thing.
Oh.
But right now, I think that these people also need some help. So that's where I go.
Absolutely. We'll put that in the link in the notes, and I'll put the link for the book as well. Thank you so much for doing this. I want to say goodbye to our audience, and I wonder if you could stick around for just a couple more questions after we say goodbye to the show. Is that okay? Sure. You still got time? Yeah. Okay. All right. So thank you, Danny, for coming on the show. So yeah, I probably could have picked his brain for a few more hours at least. So I'll have to have him on again. I have not gotten the book yet, but it is on my Amazon wish list, so I do plan to read it eventually. So many cool stories, and the thing that you get with the book is the pictures. So definitely check that out. Follow Danny on social media to keep up with him and any shows he's promoting. Follow me on social media to keep up with the show, and make sure to subscribe so you don't miss any future episodes. If you enjoyed this episode, check out some of the other episodes that I've done, like Robert Duncan from Cream Magazine. That's a great one. If you like this episode, you'll really enjoy that one. Thank you to Danny for coming on. Thank you all for listening. And remember, shoot for the moon.